of the hour, so we'll get started with our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today for this topic that we're really excited about. We're calling it From Hesitant to Help Seeking, Strategies for Support-Shy Students. Hi, I'm Dr. Mac Adkins, founder and Chief Academic Officer at SmarterServices. I'm being joined today by my colleagues from the Penn State World Campus, Kimberly Wiesner and Michelle Wiley. So we're really glad that you're here today. There's been a lot of interest in this topic with over 250 persons registering. So looking forward to this session today. A little bit of housekeeping information before we get started. The webinar will be recorded. You'll receive an email after the webinar concludes that will include the slide deck as well as all of the free resources that we mentioned during the webinar today. If you have questions or comments, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom where you can post those questions. My colleagues are monitoring that. Some of those questions they may answer, or if there's a question that us panelists need to address, they'll let us know. We will have a few minutes. Some persons benefit from a certificate of participation. If you're in that situation, just send us an email to certificates@SmarterServices, and we'll be glad to provide that continuing education certificate to you. In that email that you receive at the end of the webinar, there will be a link to a survey. Please fill it out. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's webinar and maybe some future topics that you'd like to see discussed in a webinar. If you're not familiar with SmarterServices, we've been around for a long time, since 2002, which is many years for an ed tech company. We've served over 1,000 institutions, and we have proctored and assessed the readiness of millions of institutions. We provide two different services. The first is the SmarterMeasure Learning Readiness Indicator, and we'll be saying a good bit about that assessment today, as it is an assessment that measures learner readiness. We begin by looking at non-cognitive attributes like motivation, control over procrastination, willingness to ask for help. Then we look at skill sets with using technology, and we can also measure some cognitive skills with math and writing as well. We also offer the Smarter Proctoring Process Management System, which offers the full spectrum of proctoring services. So if your school is looking for live virtual proctoring, record and review, automated, on-site testing centers, or even a new modality that we call hybrid, which allows someone at your institution, which is often a test center employee, to be the live virtual proctor, reach out and let us know, and we'll tell you more about smarter proctoring. So let's begin with this question. Why are some students support shy? Now, I'm going to be talking for a few minutes here about a few slides of some different resources. So you've got a couple of minutes there to use that Q&A feature, and I'd love to just hear from you. I want today's webinar to be engaging and participative, so put in that Q&A area a reason or two that you think students are support shy. And by that I mean, you know the saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? Well, we higher ed leaders can create lots of different types of student support: tutoring, financial services, career, health, disabilities, inclusion, technology, student life. There's a full gamut of what we provide. And I think our schools put a lot of time and resources into creating great services. But so many times students don't take advantage of those services. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is why are some students support shy? Here is a brief review of literature of recent relevant resources that you may want to check out if this topic is of interest to you. I've chaired enough dissertations to know that no bibliography in this area is complete without a reference to Tinto. Is that right? So I put there his classic work. But the resource there near the bottom is a very well-written recent article in the Lumina Foundation newsletter. I put it as a link so that you can check it out. But it really is talking about exactly what we're focusing on today. In fact, that resource is so strong that now I want to share with you 3 quotes from that article. The first quote was that many students are social scholars. They prefer to tackle challenges with their peers. One educator suggested asking students to turn to each other in a group session and share their favorite campus resource. Now, on this webinar today, I wish that there was a magic word that Kim or Michelle or I could say that's just going to change this and answer the question, but there's not a magic word. There's not a secret resource. But there are good practices. And so there may be some small good practice that you hear today mentioned that you can take back and share with your faculty that maybe in some way boosts our students' participation in our resources. And I think this idea right here might just be that. So I know many of you teach online. Maybe you also teach on campus. Maybe do this. Maybe add as just a participation exercise to have your students share information with their peers about a resource that your school provides that they thought was valuable, because you guys get it. We can do all of the promotion we want. We can put up brochures all over campus. But when a student hears another student say this resource was helpful, that carries so much more weight. The second quote from that article was, a community college success coach said, each department seems to know only about their own services, adding that this siloing leads to compartmentalized help where students don't get answers from the most appropriate source. And I think this is the situation at many of our institutions. We do a great job with those services that we've created, but the department where that service rests is so good about doing their own thing. They're so heads down in providing that service that we don't ever raise our heads to look around and see what other really good services is our school providing. And when students ask about it, increasing awareness of those other services. So one of the tools that I'll be sharing with you in just a moment is an audit that your school can do of the depth and breadth of its student services to maybe increase awareness even internally of all of the good services that your school provides. And the final quote from that article is really a question to us as educational leaders about how do we know who to help? The quote was, 83% of respondents to our questions were unsure which students use campus resources, and 77% were unsure what prevents access. So we as leaders oftentimes don't have really good usage data about our resources. We don't know who's consuming them, and we don't know of those students who are not consuming them, why. So that's what we're here today to talk about a little bit. And this conversation is framed with this movie reference in mind. And I may be dating myself with this movie reference here. Put in Q&A if you know what movie I'm talking about there. Yes, it's Jerry Maguire. If you're younger than I am and you don't know about the great Jerry Maguire movie, well, that's your homework for today, is go home tonight and watch it. And look for this scene where Jerry, who is a sports agent, who's trying to get his client, who the name of that client was Rod Tidwell, a professional athlete, played beautifully by Cuba Gooding Jr. And that athlete was kind of giving Jerry, the agent, a hard time. And in this passionate scene, Tom Cruise does such a great job of saying, help me, help you, help me, help you. And that's why we're here today. That's the spirit that we're all here trying to learn. How can we as educational leaders do a better job of helping our students? So that's the spirit in which we provide this conversation. And it's also the spirit in which we as a company and many of your schools use the SmarterMeasure Learning Readiness Indicator. Again, it's an assessment that's quantifying learner readiness. And it does it through the use of about 7 different scales. You see those listed vertically there in the middle of the screen. And this is a screen capture of an actual student's report. And the scales are like life factors, individual attributes, learning styles. And under each of those scales, there are subscales. So for the individual attributes, you see there on the screen, the subscales are academic attributes, help seeking, persistence, control over procrastination, time management, locus of control. And in this student score report, they were lowest in what? Help seeking. That's what we're talking about. Students who are not willing to ask for help when they need it. And so the SmarterMeasure assessment, as you'll see in a moment, when we look at this list of 10 reasons why students are support shy, 10 reasons why they don't seek support. On this, we're going to map each of those reasons to a subscale on the SmarterMeasure assessment, with the intention being, as your success coaches, academic advisors, and you'll hear Penn State in a moment describe how they use this data, but this data is used to identify students who may not be strong in help seeking as well as other things, and then to enrich the conversations that we have with those students because we know all of this data about their non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills. So let's look at these 10 reasons why some students are support shy. And again, these reasons come from that literature that I shared earlier with you in that bibliography. And there in kind of the bracket at the bottom in italics is the subscale of the SmarterMeasure assessment that maps to this reason. So the first reason is the most obvious and probably the most dominant, is students just aren't aware of the resources that we provide. And maybe even if they are aware of them, they don't know how and where and when to go about receiving those resources. There's information that they're missing. And I think the blame, if you may, for that falls on both sides. Students don't listen, students don't read, but sometimes schools maybe don't do a great job of promotion. But awareness is paramount. Next is a stigma that on some campuses and some communities, there's a stigma about reaching out for certain support services, for example, tutoring. Now, my daughter is a college student at Troy University. She is in a sorority, and I've been very impressed with the way her sorority, I give a shout out to Chi Omega, they do a great job of creating a culture in which if the students need to reach out for support, they're not shamed for that. In fact, in that sorority, they have sort of a point system. When they do lots of good things, including like going to football games, they get a point. But if they were to do something like going to tutoring, they would get some points too. And so maybe one idea here is if we're trying to create a culture that embraces and supports and sets a positive tone for consuming our services, is to include or to ask our student groups, sororities, fraternities, and other groups, ask them for their help in creating this positive culture so that students will reach out when they need it. Next is just the perceived self-sufficiency that students think they don't need it. This is so true many times for freshman students who maybe in their hometown high school class, they were one of the smartest students, but they get to college and they're no longer one of the smartest students. And so it's kind of a new experience for them to kind of realign where they are academically. And so the SmarterMeasure subscale of perception of academic skills maps to that reason. Next is lack of time, which especially this is true for adult and other working students who have so many responsibilities in addition to their coursework. And you know what? This is reality for so many students. It's not that they just think they don't have time. They really don't have time. And so that's why when your support people, your advisors, success coaches, whomever, are looking at these SmarterMeasure scores and they see that a student has listed their time management and their availability of time as things in which they struggle with, then we just need to have very practical conversations with these students about, okay, I get it. You've got all these responsibilities, but let's look at your calendar for each week and let's see if we can find 2 or 3 hours that you can have focused time for your studies. Valuable conversation to have with students. Next is just inconvenient hours and locations. So many times our support services are available during business hours because that's when we want to work. But, it may be something as a point of improvement that your school may want to look at offering, extended hours or late hours or weekend hours or online support services in addition to those traditional times. The next is previous negative experiences. When students just, they tried and it wasn't for them, then they need to be encouraged. Maybe if your school has made some improvements to its support services, communicate that to students so they'll be eager to go back again. And then the last four are cultural barriers. Not to be stereotypical, but many of our international students come from cultures in which if you indicate something like reaching out for help, that indicates weakness, and that's shunned. And we need to understand and appreciate that cultural background that these students are coming from, but also in a very caring way, communicate to them that in this culture, we embrace support. We want students to reach out for help. So hopefully this will destigmatize some of those cultural barriers that some of our students really do experience. Next is just lack of personalized support. When students go and they just feel like it's just a generic support service that doesn't consider their individual needs, that may be something we can improve on. Misunderstanding about the services offered. Maybe they know about the services, but there's some key benefit or some point that they don't understand. And the last one is really one of the main things that students may not understand, and that's cost. So many times students may think there is a cost when there's not. And so just promoting this to our students, that this may be a free service that your tuition and our state tax dollars is really helping to pay for. So those are 10 reasons why many students don't reach out to support, mapped over to the SmarterMeasure subscale scores. And look at this. This is about every year we do a national means report where we look at the means on all of the scales and subscales. And so this is kind of a ranking of the means of the individual attributes subscales. And a high score here is better, right? And so help seeking was next to the bottom. Locus of control was a little bit lower, but that tells me that many of our students fall in this category of they're not willing to ask for help when they need it. So if this is self-reported data that students even recognize this about themselves, it's so important when we're having conversations with our students that we address this and we just say, hey, there's no shame in the game of reaching out for support. I wanted to share this resource with you. We really like the Online Learning Consortium. We've been to their conferences many times over the years. But one resource that they provide, and it's a free resource, the link is there, and it'll also be in your post-webinar email where you can download their rubric. But it's a rubric that helps you evaluate 11 key areas of your support services. And you see those listed there: admissions, financial aid, advising, and others. And the rubric, which you can see a screen capture of here, this is an example from evaluating your orientation service. It's kind of in 3 scales. You can internally audit your own services, or if you would like an external reviewer who's unbiased to come to your campus, look at all the ways that you promote your resources, look at all the ways that you provide your resources, and get an unbiased evaluation, an unbiased audit of your school support services, this is one good way to do that. And so as we're in this conversation today, seeking to help our students be aware of and understand our support resources, maybe a good first step is for us as leaders to internally do an institutional audit of our support resources, see where the gaps are, see where the points of pride are, and then take appropriate steps based on that. So thank you for allowing me to share some information today. I'm going to turn it now over to my colleagues at the Penn State World Campus, Kimberly and Michelle.
Thank you, Mac. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Wiley, and I'm the Director of Academic Development Services, representing the Chaikin Center for Student Success.
Hi, my name is Kim Bleasner. I am a certified academic coach and a student success coordinator at the Chaikin Center for Student Success. I work with Michelle.
Go to the next slide. So Today, Kim and I are going to talk a little bit about the programming that we provide out of Academic Development Services for our online students. We have several programs and resources that are available to students. This is a section or a small piece of a much more extensive list. But today we're going to talk a little bit about Smart Track to Success, New Student Orientation, the Academic Success Kit, SmarterMeasure Outreach and Consultations, and Academic Coaching. So we just wanted to give a little overview of what some of these things are and how that we provide to students. So again, if you have questions about any of these programs, please put them in the chat, because this is just a really high-level overview of what they are. So we have what's called the Smart Track to Success program. Students are invited to this program based on specific criteria, such as being an adult learner or serving in the military or having some kind of military tie. There are two sections, Smart Track 101 and Smart Track 102. In Smart Track 101 and 102, we talk about, helping students prepare to be a college student, how to be an online learner, and help them prepare for academic success. So we cover everything from how to write a discussion post in an online course, how to write a college level paper, to how to become involved in clubs and organizations, how you can be a Penn Stater even though you live 1,000 miles away. Smart Track 101 and 102 covers 2 semesters. It's non-credit, and a scholarship is provided for students who participate. So they get a scholarship for 101 and they get a scholarship for 102. Our new student orientation is required. It teaches students how to navigate the digital environment at Penn State World Campus. It covers multiple procedures and services that are available to students. And we have a couple different versions. We have the regular new student orientation. We also have a support network orientation. That's for parents, spouses, caregivers, children, adult children. Anybody who's in a student support network can review that support network orientation. We also have an orientation for returning students who've left the university and then come back. Our Academic Success Kit is a series of self-paced modules. We like to explain it as like the Amazon of shopping on Amazon. So you click on the Success Kit and different options come up, and you can choose the one that you want to work on, and then you work through that. The modules all promote academic success. I've given some examples, or we've given some examples below there. Exam prep, understanding your syllabus, how to read it, why you should read it, what to look for, how to do group work, and many, many more. The SmarterMeasure assessment, we do SmarterMeasure consultations. Kim, do you want to do this one since this is kind of your jam? Okay.
Yeah. So the SmarterMeasure consultations, the process, this service, I should say, was offered in 2019. Our SmarterMeasure assessment is embedded in new student orientation. It is not a mandatory assessment, but since it is embedded in new student orientation and students are required to complete new student orientation, there is a perception that they must complete this assessment as part of that NSO process. A little tricky on our part, but nonetheless, our completion rates are somewhere in the 70–75% range because of the fact that it is embedded in new student orientation. So in 2019, we thought we wanted to take the SmarterMeasure to the next level because we knew that there were students who might benefit from having discussions about the results and the resources available to support them in getting prepared for asynchronous online learning, as well as just supporting them in their academic journey at World Campus. And so what we decided to do was reach out to the students, and 5 years later, Much of this process now at World Campus is automated, making our lives much easier. But in the 5-year period that we have been offering the SmarterMeasure consultations, we've done outreach to more than 11,000 students. We've had more than 1,400 students sign up for a consultation, and we've had about 800 students complete the consultation process. And so really what the consultation is really a holistic view of the student's needs. We invite discussion about what the student's interest and perceived needs are. So we just kind of look to break the ice in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then we listen to what the student has to say regarding their concerns in being an adult learner returning to school, an adult learner coming to asynchronous learning for the first time, and so forth. And so our conversations then are tailored to the resources that may benefit those students, including some of our programs such as Smart Track to Success. The idea, as I said previously, is really to prepare students for this asynchronous online learning environment and try to instill a little bit of a confidence in the resources that are available to them to help them in their studies. Through this process, we also have fruitful conversations that sometimes lead to referrals to other services. Most commonly, I would say the student disability services, but we've also made referrals to career services, the financial aid. Now we are making referrals to our newly implemented academic coaching program. So let me dive into how we're using SmarterMeasure in academic coaching. So in the spring of 2023, we decided to launch more of an experiment, I guess, with academic coaching. And in the first year of academic coaching, we learned from student feedback, that it is a program that may be beneficial to certain student populations. We currently have 2 coaches, so it like Smart Track to Success is an invitation only program at this time due to capacity reasons. But it is an extension of the consultation process. Through the consultations, we identify whether or not students may have an interest or a need in participating in academic coaching. And so there are some certain measures in SmarterMeasure that identify if a student may benefit from academic coaching. For example, if a student has 5 or more flags, we want to take a look at them. If they have flags in their perceived academic abilities, we might want to have a conversation with them about their comfort returning to school as an adult, most commonly in writing or mathematics. And so what it does is it allows us, through academic coaching, the ability to create a partnership with a student. And we explain that up front, that really we're just trying to help them capitalize on their strengths. During the coaching process, if we identify a gap, we might have commonly have a tool or a strategy that the student might find beneficial in closing that gap so that they can meet their micro goals. And really the idea is to get that student to a level of self-regulation where they're feeling comfortable as adult learners in this online environment. So through this journey in academic coaching, we help the students, or we encourage the students to utilize their strengths to develop habits that are going to lead to academic success. So we just started a new semester in August, and generally by the 3rd week, which was just a week or 2 ago, we find that many students are just struggling with finding that school-work-life balance. And so a lot of the coaching sessions, a lot of consults that take place during that time really focus on helping students find that balance. Recently, we're now in about the 4th or 5th week, and students are getting ready to write, that first maybe research paper. And so they're looking for support there. So, maybe tutoring services, maybe research resources. So, giving them the resources and the encouragement to, overcome any hurdles and build their confidence as writers in college. Our goal is to help students to the finish line, but ultimately what we are seeing is that students with coaching and students who have done the consultations are really staying in class, staying in school, completing the semester and continuing on to, the next semester. So they are persisting, and we are seeing improved retention rates with students participating in these programs. And just like all the other programs, the academic coaching is free to students, and we make them aware of that at the point of invitation. Next slide. So when we reflect back to the 10 reasons that students do not necessarily seek help that Mac introduced, we find that when we look at the 6 programs that we just discussed, each of them, multiple reasons for not seeking help are satisfied by that program. And if we can go to the next slide, I think it provides maybe a better picture of what we're talking about here. So across the top of the graph here, you can see the 10 reasons why students may avoid seeking support. And on the left-hand side, you can see our programs. ST would be the Smart Track to Success, NSO, New Student Orientation, the Ask modules. SMO is Outreach, SMC is the Consult, and then AC is Academic Coaching. And so you can see where most, if not all of the programs address each one of these areas. So in terms of lack of awareness, New Student Orientation, SmarterMeasure Outreach, and the SmarterMeasure Consultation make students aware of the resources that we have available to them at World Campus. And again, with some of these resources, we can tailor them to the students' needs and interests. And most of their needs we find out through that SmarterMeasure assessment. As far as the stigma associated with reaching out for help, are programs that really provide that one-on-one support for students, such as Smart Track to Success and academic coaching, and realistically, even the SmarterMeasure Consult on a smaller scale, really do help to lift that stigma. So just simply because we can reinforce the fact that these students, when they're seeking help, are not alone. We can tell a student who's coming back and has hesitations about their mathematics skills or their writing skills that, look, you're a unique individual, but you're not alone in that fear. And so, we're really trying to erase any stigmas associated with you're an adult learner and you don't have to know all the answers. That's why you're here in school. So we can, hopefully address the stigmas with those programs. The lack of time for resources, I'm sorry, I'm skipping perceived self-sufficiency. Again, perceived self-sufficiency is really, again, addressed in those programs where we have a lot of one-on-one interactions with the student. The perceived lack of time help-seeking barrier is really, I think, terrifically addressed with our Ask modules. Because of the fact that the Ask modules are out there, available to students, they are really a great just-in-time resource that students can access very readily on our website. We continue to grow the exposure for that resource for students. Inconvenient hours. Well, inconvenient hours are commonly addressed by those resources that are available to students when they need it and when it's convenient for them. So Smart Track to Success is a great example. New Student Orientation and the Ask modules really fulfill that need. Perceptions of negative experiences. We think that if we can get to that student, if we can have the student participate in New Student Orientation, we can have conversations with that student, we can establish how they are to use these resources. So hopefully we eliminate some of those concerns about maybe trying previous resources such as tutoring and having a bad experience. We talk the students through that and make recommendations on either other resources, or if it's a bad experience, how they can turn that experience around and make it a positive one for them. All the programs that we have at Penn State World Campus really do address cultural barriers. I believe that's one of the things that we really do focus on, is making sure that the programming that we offer is welcoming to every student that is enrolled at Penn State and World Campus. Lack of personal support. I would say all the programs, except for those ask modules, do address the fact that we can give that one-on-one support to students. Even in new student orientation, the students, the way that our program is structured, that the new students are put into small cohorts. And there is a facilitator for each cohort. And so we can minimize, or I guess we can make those groups smaller so that we can provide more individualized attention to those students at the outset. Misunderstanding of services offered. Again, the majority of the students, we can make clarifications for any misunderstandings, or we can actually have a conversation with them about how they can best utilize a resource just through conversation. So sometimes we initiate that conversation and sometimes the students initiate it, but through those interactions, we can have dialogue around how that student can best benefit from that resource. And as I mentioned previously, there are no costs for any of these resources. In fact, in SmartTrack, we will give the student a little bit of a stipend, a scholarship to participate in that program. And I think that's back to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you for Michelle and Kim for sharing that information. What I heard them say many times was that they are engaging with the students, they're having conversations with the students, and I think in this whole realm of supporting our students, that's critical. How you choose to scale that at your institution, you may be at a really small institution, you may be at a really large institution, but Penn State World Campus is an institution of substantial size, and they're figuring out how to scale that. So we at SmarterServices feel like those conversations that your success coaches, academic advisors, faculty, whomever is face-to-face with the students, those conversations is where the real growth occurs. And through the SmarterMeasure assessment, the student is self-reporting their non-cognitive traits and attributes and skills, their technical competencies. And when that person who's having the conversation is equipped with that knowledge, that conversation can be so much richer. I mean, imagine you're an advisor and a student comes to you the third week of the semester and says, hey, I failed my first math test last week. Well, what are you going to say? Well, hang in there and do better next week. Well, that's encouraging, but it's not really developmental. But when that advisor is equipped with all of this data about the student so that they can have very customized, specific conversations like Penn State is having here with their students, that's where I think we're going to begin to move the needle. And at most of your institutions, you may be using the traditional scales of SmarterMeasure. Those are your non-cognitive traits and your technical skills. You may not be aware that we also provide a math and a writing readiness indicator. These assessments are 30-item assessments. They pull from a pool of 90 items. So they're short. They're not designed to be as diagnostic or prescriptive as, say, an AccuPlacer. But you could consider using these math and writing indicators really as a student service to help students decide if they need tutoring or if they need to schedule a certain course or whatever the presenting problem may be. You presenting these scales of SmarterMeasure could be another service that you provide. And, depending on the level of license that you have for SmarterMeasure, there may be no additional cost to you to use those scales. So if you're interested in that, if you're not using math and writing, talk to your account manager and they can talk to you about that, because as you heard Michelle and Kim say, it's many times those students struggling with that first term paper, they've got that initial math test, and those are the two areas that are really discouraging early on for students. So let me pause there. And if you have a question, put it in the Q&A. We do have one question submitted. I'll allow my colleagues from Penn State to address. They said, are your academic success kits customized to military and or veteran students at all?
So I answered it in the chat, but I will answer it again. So our academic success kit modules are not currently focused on any particular student population yet. However, our new student orientation does have an additional module for military and veteran students. One of our Smart Track to Success programs, we just launched a new one this fall, and it's Smart Track for Nursing Success for students who are going from being an RN to wanting to get their bachelor's in nursing. So that's a new one. There's another Smart Track in the works. We're not really sure what it's going to look like, but it's going to have to do with quantitative skills and students who are in quantitative and majors with high quantitative courses. So we've talked about, pros and cons of having students in cohorts or in programs where everyone else is just like them, as opposed to being in cohorts where they're able to work with people who are different from them and learn from each other. So there's two sides to it. We definitely want to do everything we can for our military students, as well as our nursing students, as well as all of our students at Penn State.
Thank you, Michelle, for verbally responding to that. I do have there on the screen information about our next two upcoming sessions in this fall webinar series. And what we wanted to do in this series was really focus on topics around supporting students. That's what we're all here to do. And so today's session has been kind of like about how do you lead the horse to water and nudge it to drink, right? So supporting support shy students. The next topic is going to be one of interest to all of us in student support services. It's titled AI and Data Integration, a new frontier for student support. So we're going to be talking about what are appropriate ways that support services departments can integrate AI as well as data integration across several systems, your SIS, your LMS, your other systems. Our resource person from that is coming from CSU Global. That's Colorado State University. They do a great job with their data integration. They're on the bleeding edge with their use of AI as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what CSU Global has to share. So mark your calendars there for October 17th. If you haven't already signed up, please do so. It's free as well. And then in November, on the 13th, we're having the final part titled Empowering Every Learner, Establishing Inclusive Support for All Students. And you heard Michelle mention this when she talked about how that all of their services address the cultural issue and the cultural stigmas that can go along with that. And this is so important that we design our services and provide our services in a way that is inclusive of all types of students. And so our resource person there is going to be from Austin Peay State University. They're just exemplary in the types of student services they provide and the way that they really strive to be inclusive in those. So register for that webinar if you haven't already. So I'm looking over to the Q&A. I'm not seeing anything else added. If you do have a question, feel free just to email us here at SmarterServices. You've got our contact information, and we'll be glad to answer that. Thank you for your time today. We will be sending out the post-webinar email that will have the archive of this webinar recording. It'll include all the links to all the resources that we provided, as well as that post-webinar survey. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's session. Michelle and Kim, do you have anything else to add before we sign off?
Just thank you for having us. We've worked with SmarterServices for, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years. 12, 13-ish. And we value the relationship that we have with y'all. You've been very accommodating to our requests to change things and add things and move things around. We have a great our manager of our contract. So Tara, she's fabulous. And we just, again, we appreciate you asking us to present and to get the word out about our services. Kim, do you have anything?
Yeah, just just as a person who has done outreach that has been SmarterMeasure based for the last 5 years, this assessment is absolutely amazing for the insight that it can provide and really open dialogue with students to make sure we get them what they need to be successful. So yeah, thank you, Mac.
All righty, thank you both for the time that you spent in preparation for this. I hope that the information that they shared, as well as the information from the literature that I reviewed, is helpful. And so we're all out there trying to help our students. So we'll give you back 15 minutes on your schedule so that you can go help a student right now. Have a great day.